Druidstone is a rare RPG that is much more focused on the mechanical side of the game than its narrative. Made by the devs behind the Legend of Grimrock old school dungeon delvers, Druidstone shifts genres a little bit, but still maintains a focus on gameplay first, creating a nifty isometric RPG that feels like a cross between Final Fantasy Tactics and the Divinity Original Sin games. If some crunchy tactical action sounds up your alley, then watch on. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today we're protecting the forest in Druidstone, The Secret of the Menhir Forest. The best way to look at how and why Druidstone works is through the lens of scarcity. If there's one ever-present feeling in this game, it's that there's always more to do than resources to do it with. During any given level, you're given a whole pile of objectives you need to complete and usually have a tight window to finish them in, either racing to complete an objective in a certain number of turns or running on a soft timer where enemies will keep spawning in until they overwhelm you. And they will, in fact, overwhelm you given enough time. Your characters can do a ton of different stuff, but anything beyond an auto attack only has a limited number of charges, meaning you can't fight enemies forever. Sooner or later, there will just be more of them than you've got spells for. The game also makes a critical decision with how it handles actions and objectives. Every turn, your trio of adventurers each get move points and a single action point, which is what you use to actually shoot a fireball at something with. But here's the thing, everything in this game, no matter how minor, requires a full action to complete. Need to disarm a barrel of explosives before they explode? That's gonna take an action. Need to pull a lever to open a door? That's an action. Want to open a chest to complete a side objective? You better believe that's an action. And when you're already at the end of a level, the half-dead, resources tapped, trying to fend off a bunch of centipedes, you can really feel driven up against a wall, and suddenly it becomes difficult to find the space to actually complete that side objective. Once again, there's so much to do in a turn between fending off enemies and completing objectives, and your resources and priorities are stretched to the point of breaking to do them all. But stretch you will, because the game doles out rewards for going the extra mile and completing those side objectives, and you're desperately going to want them. Finishing objectives gives you both money and gems, and in both cases, I never had as much as I wanted. Gems can be used to buff up your character's abilities, but you need to space them out across 3 different characters, and every time somebody levels, they get a new toy you instantly want to start upgrading. Money, meanwhile, gets used to buy equipment, but you really have to pick and choose what you get. The store gets updated with more goodies after every level, and you can only afford to buy something every 2 or 3 missions. In both cases, you're forced to make genuinely difficult decisions trying to figure out what to upgrade first just because the possibilities expand faster than your ability to capitalize on them. And those decisions are made doubly difficult because this is an incredibly deadly game where every small buff you can get makes a massive difference. If there's anything that strikes me about this game's combat, it's what a fine edge the game's balance teeters on. Unleveled characters can die in 2 or 3 hits, with your opponents being just as squishy, if not even more so. This is a game where an enemy with 10 health can be a legitimate boss threat that takes you 3 turns of undivided attention to kill, and standing next to 3 enemies is a death sentence. It all leads to a rhythm where offense is the best defense, death is the most effective form of crowd control, and success is often determined by how many enemies you can kill in a single round before they get a chance to fight back. That might come off as a complaint, but I actually loved it. It's tense, and there's always this trade-off between blowing your big spells early to wipe a room before it can fight back, and saving them for when something potentially worse spawns later. And those moments where you overcommit early in a level and find yourself backed up against a wall later on are when the game really shines. That dynamic shifts a bit as your party grows, however. Health pools get bigger, heals become more common, and pretty quickly each character has a pile of a dozen abilities they can all use. At the 5-hour mark, this shift had just begun for me, but it was still easy to get overwhelmed if I wasn't careful, as the game kept balance in check by throwing ever-increasingly massive hordes of enemies at me. So that's an awful lot about how the game plays, but so far I've been ignoring arguably the most important part of an RPG, the story. And that's because, well, the story isn't really the game's main selling point. It's pretty average, all things considered, and feels like it mostly just exists to grease the wheels and give you excuses to get into interesting and varied mechanical situations. The plot largely revolves around 3 characters. Ava, the plot mule exposition dumper, Oiko, a lovable scamp that's full of awful ideas, but at least tries to be a vaguely good person, and Leonhard, a generic amnesiac chosen one with less personality than a plank of wood. Oiko is the only character of the core trio I came to like, and it was largely because his status as a tag-along comedic relief character gave him more flexibility to, actually have a personality. Regardless, the story picks up with our heroes Forest Valley under assault. A cult worshipping a fire god has suddenly grown in prominence, and they're full of crazy people that summon demons and just want to burn the whole place down. Overall, the plot kinda has that weekly Saturday morning cartoon vibe. Every mission starts when the heroes get a call that those dang cultists are up to no good in the forest again. So they go there, find a unique situation they need to deal with, make a few jokes, save the day, and are home in time to crack open a few cold ones. Overall, the plot is perfectly serviceable, but the characters driving it are a bit too flat to make it anything special. If all you're here for is a good story, there are other RPGs that will probably sate your hunger better, but what Druidstone does have is perfectly functional, breezy fare that largely tries to keep out of the way of the gameplay. So how does this all come together? What do you get out of 5 hours with Druidstone? Middling story notwithstanding, I've been having a lot of fun playing this one. It's tough and crunchy, but at the same time feels easy to understand and slip into. And because it's so easy to slip into, it also feels easy to pick up and put down as needed. According to the game's own store page, this one's a 15 to 20 hour long game, which is on the upper end of games I try to cover. But the rules are intuitive enough and the story disposable enough that you can set it down for a month, then come back and feel right at home. On balance, I'd recommend Druidstone to any fans of turn-based RPGs or strategy games. It's not an absolute must-buy, but it's a fun, confident, and comfortable take on the genre, and if you're looking for something easy to slip into for an hour late at night, that's kind of what you want. Especially when you consider how rare a short 15-hour RPG is in this day and age. I'd say give it a chance. You'll probably have some fun. And if you're looking for more turn-based goodness, check out my review of Mechanicus, a Warhammer game drenched in lore and atmosphere with a very similar gameplay dynamic to Druidstone. If you're looking for something a bit more story-focused though, look no further than Heaven's Vault, an adventure game where you get to practice archaeology and investigate multiple richly realized sci-fi empires. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.